What's going on, YouTube? OCD for EDC here. And what I got for your face balls today, we're talking CRK knives. So, what we're going to be talking about here is how these knives are made and are they worth the money? You know, Chris Reeve Knives have been around for quite some time now, and a lot of people talk about them like they're grail knives. And I get questions all the time. People ask me about Chris Reeve Knives, and they ask me, is it worth spending, $450, $500 on a pocket knife? So we're going to talk about that in this video. First, we're going to, well, not first, but during this video, we are going to completely disassemble both of these. I want to give a shout out to my buddy BJ Hill over at Hilltop Knives and Gear. Both of these knives are his. He actually loaned these to me, and I just decided to do this video and kind of talk about the wonderful parts of Chris Reeves, maybe where they fall a little short, and talk about all the different aspects as it applies to these two pocket knives. This one here is a Chris Reeves Sebenza 21. This is the sheep's foot style blade. This is S35VN. It is a hollow grind, single side thumb stud. And this here is a Chris Reeve Incosi with a Tanto blade. Both are full-size knives, and just to give you an idea of the size, here is a Spyderco Gale Bradley 2. Here is a Ritter Hogue. And here is a Benchmade Super Freak. So, in my opinion, these three knives that I just put out, the Ritter Hogue, the Gale Bradley 2, and the Super Freak, all three compete very well against the Sebenza and the Incosi. Whether we're talking the Sebenza 31 or the 21. The 31 has a few minor changes to it, but overall it's very, very similar. So, this knife right here, you can purchase this knife in 20 CV blade steel. This is an American-made knife, and you can purchase this thing for like 100 and somewhere between 100 and there's different variants, different colorways. Somewhere between $160 and $175, something like that. Give or take $5 or $10. So, substantially less than what a CRK is going to cost you. The Gale Bradley 2, this knife is in the $200 range. I don't remember what it costs right off the top of my head. Either way, still substantially less than what the CRKs cost, as well as the Super Freak. It's also significantly less money. So, are the CRKs worth the money? So that's what we're going to get into. They are titanium frame locks, where these other three knives that I threw out here are not. The Gale Bradley's a liner lock, and then these two, we have the Axis lock and the Able lock, very similar bar style locks. So, maybe you have a preference one way or another there. Certainly, some locks are more fidgetable and that sort of a thing. But here we're just talking about the CRK knives and if they are worth it. So, unlike most knives, most knives have got Torx hardware. CRK uses Allen keys or Allen wrenches or hex, however you want to describe that. And most people in the knife world talk about Weeha bits as being some of the best stuff out there, and no doubt Weeha makes very, very nice tools. When it comes to Allen wrenches, Bondus. This is your go-to. These people make the best Allen wrenches out there. They do really good work, and these are the ball-end style. But to take apart your Chris Reeves knives, if I remember correctly, we need an 1/8 inch for the pivot. Yeah. So 1/8 inch on the Incosi pivot. And then I think it's 5/64. Let me verify that real quick. On the Sebenza. Yes, 5/64. So those are the two size Allen wrenches that you're going to need. Set those down, or Allen keys, as it were. So, for those that don't know, which you should know if you've ever seen a Chris Reeve knife, because they all say Idaho made. It's kind of hard to see it on the Inkosi there. And on the Sebenza, maybe a little easier to, yeah, there you go. You can see it a little better there. Idaho made. So, Chris Reeve Knives is in a suburb of Boise, Idaho. I've actually been out there to the actual place where these are made. It's a very nice shop. Not overly huge, but very, very nice. And they do a really great job. So these knives are all about the precision. And we'll start with the Sebenza. And we're going to disassemble this knife here quick. And talk about what makes these knives great. So, I took the wrong side of the screw out, but that's just fine. So, CRK knives are really kind of a joy to take apart and reassemble. Because you really can't screw it up. The hardware only goes in one way, and it's pretty difficult to screw that up. And then you can also just kind of tighten it down. You don't have to get the tension just right. And that is indicative to their machining prowess. Let's go ahead and pull the blade out. You can see that the washers are gigantic on these knives, which gives a tremendous amount of lateral support, as well as the pivot bushing. So, set this down real quick. Get a little rag here. Start setting these parts out. So there's the washers, pivot bushing, back spacer, and lanyard tube. All right, so there's your Chris Reeves Sebenza. Now let's pull down the Inkosi. So the Inkosi, get my Allen key here. The Inkosi is constructed a little differently than the Sebenza, which you're going to see here in a moment. And it is arguably stronger construction. Certainly the blade has more lateral support, which is really fantastic. Yeah, that was hardware was spinning there. Yeah, the pivot screw on this thing. Look at how big that pivot screw is. Just gigantic on the Inkosi. Ah, there we go. Oop, dropped a part here. There we go. It's the blade stop pin. And you can see that these knives are very dirty. And look at the washer. Look how large that washer is. And then you can see the cutouts in the washer, which we're going to talk about that and why those are there. You can see here on the show side, massive washer. Yeah, really, really fantastic machining. Okay. So, you look at this knife, and it's a 2-slab construction, very similar to lots of other knives out on the market. There's many, many knives out there that are built just like this. And, I've had multiple people say to me, well, I can buy a titanium knife from this or that manufacturer, and it's way, way less money than the Chris Reeves. Well, the difference is with Chris Reeves, they do a tremendous amount of surface grinding. Surface grinding, for those that don't know, just using a CNC mill doesn't always yield you the best results when it comes to making sure things are perfectly flat. And the only way to really ensure things being perfectly flat is to use what's called a surface grinder. There's lots of different ways that surface grinders work, many different styles of machines out there, and but it truly is the best way to ensure that a surface is perfectly flat, which is not as easily achieved as one might think. So surface grinding is where that really comes into play, and it's a time-consuming process, and the equipment is very expensive. I think there have been some videos done at Chris Reeve's manufacturing building that show all the surface grinders and stuff. So I can't remember if Blade HQ did a video on that some time ago, but I'm sure if you go on YouTube, you can find videos showing the different machining processes that happen at Chris Reeves. And these are, the things that make these knives what they are, really, and why they're kind of so sought after and held in such high regard. The machining is really the key difference. I mean, you can get grade 5 titanium elsewhere. You can get S35 VN elsewhere. However, the precision machining is what you're paying for. And, the overall designs are really, really great as well. And these knives are designed and built to work, I know a lot of people purchase Chris Reeve knives, and because of the cost, they're kind of safe queens, and they just sit there and look pretty. Well, that's it's unfortunate, because the knives really are fantastic, and they're hellaciously strong, and really are meant to be used. So it's kind of a bummer that a lot of them never really end up seeing any kind of great use, which is just it's just because they cost so much money. And I fully understand that. People spend a bunch of money on something and they don't want to tear it up, and I get that. However, these knives really truly were made to be tore up and beat on. So even though you may choose not to beat on your CRK knife, I guess you can take solace in the fact that it was made for that, and it will take it if the day ever comes that you decide to start whooping on it, as it were. So you can see here where the washer rides on this Inkosi blade, and that just gives so much lateral support to that blade. There's so many knives out there that have tiny, tiny little washers. One that comes to mind is the Spyderco. Oh, the one that's got the little wheel on top. I'm trying to think of what the hell the name on that thing is. The Akuchi. The Akuchi. That thing has got the thinnest little washers. I mean, there can't be but 1/8 of an inch of surface area around there that's actually supporting that blade laterally. And this is where the knife really shines, is in its just overall strength. So the Inkosi has what the Sebenza 31 has, which is a ceramic ball that is mounted in the lock face, and this is what interfaces with the actual blade, is this ceramic ball. For those that don't know, ceramic is much, much harder than the surrounding titanium, so this lock face will never wear. That ceramic ball will be there for many, many years to come. But if it ever did wear or come out, you can see that it's staked on either side. So they mill this little pocket, and then they insert the ball, and then they stake the titanium, which is those two little grooves, which just kind of mushrooms out the titanium to capture that ball in place so it cannot move. So it's a very strong system, and should be there for life. It should never go anywhere. And as far as just wearing out over time, or because of abrasion, that's just not something that's going to be an issue. So the other thing that we can see here on all of the CRK hardware, you can see that everything are tapered screws. And what this does, if we look at the holes, you can see there's a corresponding taper machined into the titanium. And what that does is it increases the surface area that fastener has to hold on to. So instead of it just being a flat-headed fastener, you've got this really great mating surface there. And this is true across all of their hardware, which from just an engineering standpoint, it increases the machining complexity and time spent machining, as well as it increases the overall rigidity and structure of the parts and components. So, if we look at the two lock sides here from the Incosi with this ceramic lock interface to the Sabenza here, and you can see this line right here where this is hardened or carbidized. And then you can see the detent ball there is a ceramic detent. Over here, this plays detent and lock face. So the ball does both functions. You can see that it sits proud. If I can show that off, it sits proud of the lock bar on this surface here, as well as this surface up here. So it's doing both functions, serving as a detent ball as well as the lock face. You can see one of the main differences is the pivot area. Where's it at? So here is the pivot barrel and the pivot screw. And these are all custom hardware components that are made in-house by Chris Reeves. And this is the kind of stuff that you're paying more for. So compared to, Benchmade, for example, these are hardware components that Benchmade purchases. Along with Hogue, same thing. These are all screws that are built, by a hardware company. Same thing with Spyderco. These companies are not making their own hardware. They're purchasing it from a company that manufactures screws. Chris Reeves is building, or at least designing. I guess I can't say, I don't know 100% that they're building all of their own hardware in-house, but this was designed for the Incosi. So it's made to their specifications. And I would assume that it's made in their place in Idaho, I would think. I could be wrong. But definitely really, really nice hardware. And you can just see the diameter of it is massive. So all of these things add up to just a super, super strong knife. So let's see here. So the outer diameter of that pivot, it's over 3/10 of an inch thick. So it's, larger than a 1/4 inch bolt going through there for the pivot screw. And then also the blade stop is a 1/4 inch. There you go, 0.249. And that's the stop pin for the blade. And you can see that all the pins, if applicable, they're all shouldered, which is really nice. And it makes for a knife that when you reassemble it, you hear some custom makers and stuff that they don't like, somebody taking their knives apart because they, not every surface is perfectly flat. The hardware wasn't designed or engineered for the knife, and so things have to be torqued just perfect so everything works together. And by disassembling it, you screw that up, and so it's tricky to get it back together and to work properly. The easier a knife is to disassemble and reassemble, the better the machining quality is. So with CRKs, they send you, I'm using Bondus Allen keys here, but they send you the Allen keys in the box with the knife, which is always a sign of something, it's a maker that believes in his product. He encourages people to take them apart and wants you to do that. So that's a really nice touch that I enjoy for sure. I'm the type of person that likes to pull stuff down for maintenance and that sort of a thing. And so I've always enjoyed that aspect of Chris Reeve knives. And overall, they're just extremely well made. Just all the machining, everything about them has been well thought out. And like I said, you can disassemble them, reassemble them time and time again. They go back together the exact same way every single time. No questions asked. They just work. So, yeah, it's good for sure. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start putting this in Cosi back together. One of the other really awesome things about CRKs, they have these perforated washers. And so you get all the added lateral support of a washer that has a diameter of almost an inch in diameter. 0.95, 0.94995, something like that. So this thing's almost a 1 inch diameter. However, you have these holes cut out, and what that does is it gives a place for dirt to escape. So if you get any dirt stuck in there, those will fall to the open areas and get caught up there, and then you don't have to worry about dirt being present, and screwing up your action. Now, most people talk about Chris Reeve's action as being hydraulic or glassy. And the reason for that mainly has to do with the fluorinated grease that Chris Reeves, they send along with their knives. Now, I'm not going to use fluorinated grease, mainly just because I don't have any here. But it's not a requirement to use that grease. It is, of course, that's what Chris Reeves recommends using. But the reason that hydraulic feel, or that, kind of stiff, where there's like kind of tension against the knife, it doesn't have this real free action, is, like I said, because of that grease. That grease is extremely viscous. That fluorinated grease, it's like a paste almost, and that's the reason why the knife has that feel more than anything else. If you put a lightweight lubricant, which is what I'm doing here, this lubricant that I'm using is Lucas CLP, I think it's called. But you will find out that your CRK knife will have a much more free action, if you will. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a moment. So this here is an applicator. I'll throw a link where you can purchase this, and this is the oil that I'm using. This is Lucas CLP. It's clean, lubricates, and protects. So there you go. And you can buy that stuff. It's really inexpensive. Couple bucks for that like 4-ounce bottle. And then this little pen applicator is a few dollars. So yeah, works well. It's good stuff. All right. Okay. Putting this thing together here. Get this big ol' huge pivot screw in. All right, and then we got one more screw to put in on the back side here. Like I said, these are extremely simple to take down and reassemble. And they're just, yeah, fantastic knives all the way around. You can see there, Just putting it back together. It's perfectly centered. And now with the lighter weight oil, it just, you can, thumb flick it open. Where before you had to slow roll it out because of that grease. So if you want to, make your CRK flickable, if you will, you just need to disassemble it, clean all the oil out of it, or the grease, the fluorinated grease, and reassemble it with lighter weight lubricant. And then you'll be able to flick it open and all that stuff. Okay, so you can see on the Incosi, we have very, very simple construction. You have this standoff back here, and it's a one-piece standoff. You have the stop pin, which has a screw from this side, but not the show side. And then you have the pivot assembly, which is made up of a male side screw and a female side. And the knife runs right on the outside of the pivot barrel. And that's it. And you have a screw for the pocket clip. On the Sebenza, you have a completely different scenario here for construction. Everything about this knife is different, really. There's a lot more components that make up the Sebenza. And to me, that's just due to the age of its design. I like to use the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. And so as time went on, and the Incosi model came out, you can see that they just simplified the Sebenza over time, right? With the Incosi, you have the same phosphor bronze washers both sides, and that's just a function that this is just a simpler design, the same size hardware all the way around. With the exception of the pocket clip screw. These screws are the same, along with this one. It just makes the knife just simpler all the way around. You can see here on the Sebenza, you've got this washer on one side. This washer goes on the lock side. So if you were to put the big washer, it doesn't fit on the lock side because of the lock bar. So they figured that out on the Incosi on how to do it. On the Sebenza, you have a pivot bushing, which is a fine scenario, but it just adds more complexity, more components, more pieces. So, yeah, that's just, it is what it is. Let's see here. We'll start putting this back together. Okay, that goes there. Back spacer goes on that one. That's the stop pin bushing. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. All right, now we've got all the parts in their right location. I'm just cleaning the blade up here a bit. All right. So that goes down that direction. And we're going to throw down a little bit of lube here. Get some on this pivot bushing. All right. Okay. I'm also going to put a little here on the detent path. All right. I'll throw that washer down and make sure. So one thing you want to make sure is that your washers are seated over the pivot bushing, because you don't want, oh, there you go, like this. You want to make sure that your washers sit over that pivot bushing and are in the correct orientation. All right. Now, actually, I'm going to close the blade here. One of the nice things, because this is a different design on the Sebenza, you do have the advantage of having all of the hardware take the same size Allen key, which is a nice touch. But the Incosi, not the end of the world. You know, it's pretty typical to have the pivot be a larger tool than the rest of the hardware on the knife. So, all right. Again, perfectly centered. You can see, yep. And action is outstanding. So, doesn't have the, hydraulic feel, but like I said, that's strictly because of the fluorinated grease that's in these knives. From the factory, it's almost like a paste instead of being a lightweight oil, which is what you're used to in most knives. So, end of the story here. On the Chris Reeves, what you're paying for is the construction quality, the expert machining that goes into these knives, the quality of all the components, and the aspect that you can disassemble them, reassemble them, and without any jacking around, they're perfectly centered, and they function as intended. These are knives that are going to last a very, very long time. Both of these knives have been beat on and used and abused, and they look and feel fantastic. This particular Sebenza, this thing was full of snail trails, and I bead blasted it quite some time ago. At this point, it's been several months ago now for BJ, and I re-anodized the thumb stud and the lanyard pin, and it looks brand new. Looks absolutely brand new again. So, even if you beat these knives up hard, you can make them look new again. And that's just a testament to how great these knives are overall. So in my book, CRK's absolutely worth the money. You're getting exactly what you're paying for, which is a precision piece that's made to last a lifetime. Truly, that's what it is. The hollow grinds are fantastic. The hollow grind is much more aggressive on the Sebenza than it is on the Incosi. And that's just due to the Sebenza, the Incosi being intended to be a harder use knife. Everything about the Incosi, from the diameter of the pivot to the diameter of the stop pin, the size of the washers, how much lateral support there is, everything about this knife is made to be harder use. I wish they would do the same aggressive hollow grind here, but it still has a nice hollow ground blade. It's kind of hard to tell. It's hard for me to show that off, but it is a nice hollow grind. It's just not as aggressive as the Sebenza. The Sebenza is a deeper hollow grind, which means that the Sebenza is going to have really, really good cutting geometry for a long time. I mean, you could sharpen this blade up to this point or so before you really start seeing any noticeable difference in its cutting performance, which makes it just a fantastic knife. And you can buy a replacement blade for it for a little bit of nothing, and it's still going to fit this handle because every single one is machined to perfection. So anyway, guys, Chris Reeves, I give them 2 thumbs up. In my opinion, they're the most consistent full production American knife producer. They just put out excellent work and have for many, many years. Definitely worth the cost. I know it's expensive, but you get what you pay for. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. We'll catch you next time. I'm out. Hey!